Okay, I'm back. So in Shields Ministry, we talking about marriage today. Can marriage last in this time that we live in right now? Because you got a lot of ups and downs with marriages. So our specific point is to talk about marriages. So that's what I'm doing today, talking about marriages, and we talking about could they last today. And I'm gonna go ahead and interview OSHA. So I'm gonna see if I can request her. Let's see. We'll move forward from there. We'll go ahead and introduce Osh. Let me see. As soon as she come in, I think she coming in right now. There she is right there. Okay, cool. And so we'll let everybody join. And so I'll tell y'all the specifics. Just understand that this is a safe space, right? So everything we say here is going to be, be respectful. Again, this is not a situation where we're talking about, men against women against men, or things not to argue or nothing like that. What we're trying to do is gain perspective. So I want y'all to be understand a woman's perspective, men, and men understand a female's perspective as we move forward. Nobody knows it all, but I'm so glad that we got OSHA here today, and I'm so glad that she was able to answer the call because this is very, very important. Let me just tell you why this is important. Our conversation today is about marriages. Can marriages last in 2024 or are they out the door? So this is somebody younger than me, and she been married longer than me, which is really, really great. So she's younger than me, she's been married longer than me, and so we talking about marriages in general, right? So I'm gonna ask her a couple of questions, and we're gonna get into marriages. Can marriages last, or what do we think? So we're gonna go through pros and cons of marriages and understand where we are today, and I'm gonna let her tell her specific story. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna have other people join in to have other comments or things say. So it's really about marriage. Okay, so we're gonna kick it off like this. So Osh, can you introduce yourself to the community, please?
Sure. So I'm Osha Jones. I've been married for 16 years, and I've been with my spouse for 21 years. And I'm 39 years old. I turned 39 this year. He'll be 40 next month. So that's basically half our lives that we've been together. And yeah, I live in the Chicagoland area, and I'm a believer in Jesus and the kingdom of God citizen. And yeah, and I'm happy to be here, Carlos, to answer whatever questions people have or whatever you have to share with you guys my journey
Perfect.
on the marriage.
Perfect. I just want the people to understand that there's pros and cons of marriage, right? And I chose you in particular. It's a lot of people that's married, but just let me just throw something out to y'all. I want y'all to understand 20% of all marriages fail in the first 5 years. And I also want you to understand 32% of marriages fail in the first 10 years. 48%, don't last when you get married 18 and under, and 25% doesn't last at 25, right? But we're here to say that we have some people that last longer than that and that has lasted longer than that and continue to go. So marriage is a beautiful thing despite what anybody may say and despite all of our other conversations. I'm bringing it full circle. I want you to have the ups and downs of marriage. So if you're thinking about getting married, if you already are married or you're tired of your spouse, I'm not saying right or wrong, but this is an open discussion where we can talk about these type of things, right? So Osha, the first question I have for you is, can you tell me how old were you when you met your spouse?
Sure. So I was 18 and he was 19 years old. We met at a job. It was my job that I had in high school. So this was my last summer working there before I started college in the fall. And it was his summer job. He had done a year already in college and he was just doing it for the summer. And we crossed paths there and we just been together ever
I
since.
love it. So is this something, could you take us back to your childhood? I mean, you know how they have theories of girls always want to be married with the Barbies. Is this something that you dreamed of to always want to be married?
No. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she raised me to be more of like a career woman because she didn't want my only options is to like depend on a man to take care of my financial needs or take care of me. So I was very independent. I was very focused on just getting into my career, and I was straight A student in high school, or in school in general. So I graduated number 5 out of my class. So I was very focused. Um, And I grew up more like middle class. Both my parents were in the house, and I definitely saw my parents go through a lot of things in their marriage. They've been married over 40 years now. And I do think me and my brother have benefit, even though they definitely went through their ups and downs, infidelities. My mom had a nervous breakdown when I was in kindergarten. Like there was a lot of things that happened, throughout my life, but God kept us, together and kept me stable. And I thank God for that. I wouldn't go back and change my childhood at all. Definitely had two very loving parents, and I'm grateful that they're still alive and that me and them and my younger brother are very close. And so I grew up, seeing a marriage that I'm not going to say wasn't dysfunctional to some degree, because I'm sure there was some dysfunction in it, but I also felt like there was a lot of love, and I seen a lot of commitment between my parents, because they both cheated on each other before and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't understand all of it throughout because I was different ages and stuff, but I appreciate that they stayed through it, and it helped me have a perspective of marriage that I want to stay through it. No matter what, like there's nothing that me and my spouse can't move through.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now when you about 18, 19, that's super duper young. And so
Yeah.
did you feel like you had an opportunity to date outside your husband before you met him? Or do you feel like you were able to, shake your shoulder a little bit? Like, tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, I had a lot of boyfriends, I guess I can say that. Like, but again, I was 18 when I met him, so those boyfriends were like at 17, 16. I mean, I feel like I had a boyfriend when I was in third grade up, right? And I had what you call first loves, that I met in like sixth grade and was with him till high school, and then he went to a different high school and whatever. So, I mean, I had those, and I had a lot of different people in between. And the job that I worked was a call center. So there was a lot of different people from all different cities that worked there. So I would meet a lot of people there. A lot of men would try to approach me there. So, and I was the kind of girl who I would never take anybody's number, but I would give my number because I would always be like, I'm not going to call you. But if you call me, then I'll have your number. And that's kind of like how it was. So I tried to give like all people, because I feel like this is just how I'm wired. And maybe because I had a mom who dealt with like depression and stuff like that. Like I had a thing about like rejecting people. So I didn't feel good about that. So no matter if I was like attracted to the man or not, I would always give them my number because it's up to me like to respond. They may or may not call me. So that was kind of like that. And I feel like because I had a goal to save myself until I got married. So because that was my goal and I was very vocal about that, I feel like I talked to probably 10 times more people than most people do in that age from the age that I met Rashid, to, let's say my dad said I couldn't really date until I was 16. So let's just say from 16 to 18. So 2 years, I dated probably a lot of people, but I didn't sleep with them or anything like that. And I feel like what happened in my dating life is once we weren't talking about it or wasn't coming up, like then they'll stop calling. Then a new guy would already start calling. Like that's how it was. And so I think I got to know a lot of males and their like how they are, like different personalities, and like those that were trying to be something that they really wasn't. And I got a lot of men who want to bring me home to their families and stuff like that, and I would meet a lot of these moms and things, and I'm just like, but I also was very good at discerning like this is not who you really are, like you're trying to be something. That's what attracted me to my husband, honestly. When I met him, I remember my girlfriend, we were walking out to the parking lot and I was getting in my car and he wasn't getting in no car. He was just in the parking lot. And he was actually waiting. Well, I found that out later. He was waiting for his friend who had borrowed his car to pick him up from work. So he asked, me to, could he talk to me for a minute? And my friend was being kind of mean, like, oh, come on, you always give me your number out kind of thing. She was kind of hating, I'm going to say. And so then I was like, stop, you being mean or whatever. So I gave him a minute and I gave him my number like I did to everybody. And he called me and I just felt like from the moment we talked, we were playing phone tag a lot. And then finally we got on each other's, we finally got a hold of each other. And it was his birthday. I'll never forget that. And he was with his girlfriend, actually. And I remember hearing like the girl in the background being like, get off the phone, or kind of thing. And I was like, are you with somebody? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. I was like, that's disrespectful. And I was just like, so I got off the phone. And so I was like, we can talk later or whatever. And then we went on a first date, and I will never forget, we talked so long, and our two friends that were like our wing people, they was kind of like had to come get us like out the car because we was talking for so long. And I just felt like my husband wasn't trying to be anybody, but his name is Rashid. I felt like he was just trying to be, he was just Rashid. Like, it was not, this is who I am.
Hold the phone, hold the phone. So y'all went on y'all first date while he still had a girlfriend or not? Because you didn't specify that.
Uh, I have to ask him, but I think he had broken up with the girl, and it was a girl that he had met in college his first year that ended up living out also in Illinois. He went to college in Mississippi initially. I think I gotta ask him that. That's an interesting question.
No, that
I don't know.
is because some of the women want to understand initially, can I still be able to cuff a man although they're in a relationship? Because men always try to holler, right? So that's number one. Let's go back to, because you said a lot, and so I want other people to be able to chime in, but I do have a few other questions I want to ask, but I do want to, because a lot of things you said we already had topics on. We all had topics on celibacy before, right? Some of the didn't agree, and some of the guys looked at it differently. Some of the girls were like, well, this is what I want to do. So let's take me back there. You talked about your parents. Tell me about your religious upbringing.
So my dad was the spiritual leader in our household, and I feel like he got more serious about God after my mom's nervous breakdown. He grew up in the church, but he wasn't necessarily living that way. He was I guess he was a player or whatever you want to call it out here. And my mom, you know, he met my mom. They're 4 years apart. So my mom wasn't out of high school yet when they met. And so he was friends with my mom's older sister. And so that's kind of how they met. My dad coming to visit her sister, not that they were dating, but just his friend from college. And then I guess he thought my mom was cute, whatever. So that's how they got together. So my mom didn't grow up in anything per se. So she got all her exposure to Jesus through my dad and Christianity or whatever. And so he was very adamant about us. We went to church. We went to a family church every Sunday. So my church was a small church in Chicago, and I was like, nobody else was like my age. So I would bring like my friends from school to come with me to church. So I had like friends at church for real. So I think but I couldn't bring them every Sunday or every, event. So I think what ended up happening with me is I started really paying attention a lot at a young age. I used to take notes like in Sunday service. And so wanting to save myself till marriage, I don't know, at some point that just got in my heart at some point. And I remember when my friends started breaking their virginities and stuff like that, like around freshman year in high school, I just thought it was stupid. There's just me. Like, I just thought it was stupid. And I kind of made them feel like they were stupid for, giving their virginity up like that. It was something that to be cherished. Like, these people gonna be gone here today, gone tomorrow. Like, I didn't look at sex like that. I don't think I'm wired that way either. Like, I know now that I'm older that I wouldn't have done well having multiple people like that in my life. I'm not wired like that. So it's best that I save myself for one person, because emotionally that's the only thing I can handle. And that's me. But I also learned from a lot of my friends that it just wasn't worth it. I felt like if you wanted, I don't know. I felt like I got the same attention as they did. I got the same things that they did. They got, maybe a man taking them out on dates or buying them fancy things, and I didn't have to do anything. So in my mind, I'm just kind of like, what's the point? Like, you could still date people.
Let me fast forward you to this. Okay, so tell me about you and your husband getting serious when y'all was dating. And so how did he feel about the celibacy thing and him having to wait? And did y'all do anything, kiss or fly?
Yeah, we definitely kissed. I'm not quite sure how he actually felt. Ask him now, 39, at 39, he thinks differently than how he thought then. But I don't know how he felt, but he never approached me, like wanting to be intimate or anything. But the women that he was intimate with, I would say, hey, those girls ain't gonna wake up tomorrow feeling no kind of way. Like, so go do that. Like, let's have an open relationship. And we did. We had an open relationship in college for 4 years. And then we only was serious like the year before we got married. Like, serious meaning like we weren't dating anybody else. But and he would tell me about every girl he slept with, anything they did. All of that. I knew about all of that. And he would tell me. And I think that really helped us build a friendship, though, because a lot of men are not comfortable sharing that type of information with their woman. But because that's just the way that our relationship, at some point when I met Rashid, I decided that I didn't want to be a girlfriend to anybody, because girlfriend and the world thought that was supposed to mean I'm supposed to do wifely duties. And I just didn't agree with that. So I just said, I'm not being a girlfriend. We can be friends, because the expectations of having sex ain't gonna even be there. I'm your friend. So that's kind of like, and I used to call Rashid in college, my something like it. So it was like, he was just my guy friend, but he was like my number one. I mean, he had my attention, more than any of the other people that I may have been talking to. So it was definitely difficult for us in college, for sure. We definitely got close many, many times, but I just still didn't want to, and I didn't know that was going to be my husband. I mean, like, I'm 18, 19 years old. So, and I didn't want to share that with anybody but my husband. Cause like, again, Rashid could be there today in college life, but not tomorrow, and I feel it is a bond that we share. I don't know how much he values it, to be honest. But I think for me, it is a value add. It was a value add for me. It saved me from a lot, I think, of drama and probably heartache and all kind of stuff. So I'm glad that I did stick with it.
No, you know what? I'm glad too, because it's very uncommon. This is why, I'm asking these questions. Okay, so what made, and I know you can't answer for your husband, but what was the turning point? What made him propose? How did we get to that point? How did we get from almost coming close to having sex? Oh my God, I'm a virgin till I get married. And what made the situation turn?
So I was going after graduation. We ended up graduating the same year because he had some issues in college. So even though he was a year ahead, we ended up graduating the same year in 2007. And at that time, I was going to go back to my home church, and they weren't wanting me to lead the youth ministry. So that the couple that led that ministry was like, oh, well, they was kind of vetting me. And they was just kind of seeing where I was to see if I was a good, a pick to transition it to. So they were like, oh, are you dating anybody else? Oh, I got something like it kind of person. And they like, oh, we should go on a double date. So we went on a double date at the zoo, Brookfield Zoo. And basically, I don't know, we were talking a lot with the couple, and then they took us off. She took me, and her husband took Rashid, and they had separate conversations with us. And I remember the wife telling me, she was like, I don't know what it is, but I've sensed something in my spirit that something is taking him away from you. And she was like, and I don't know if it's another woman or what it is. She was like, so you need to decide, like, if this is the person for you or not, or basically let him go. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went home and I started praying about it, like fasting about it. Like, okay, I mean, is this my husband, God? And I started doing like a pros and cons. Cause I mean, I'm 22 years old, and I'm like, is this my husband? So, cause in my mind, I thought my husband would be just like me. He would be wanting to be celibate, and he would be just like me. That's just what I thought. And I didn't feel like Rashid was just like me per se, because I thought that he was weak because he couldn't keep himself from having sex with people or doing sexual things. So even us getting close, like I felt like that was his weakness, not mine, kind of thing. So I didn't think that would be the kind of man that God would send me. So I did a pros and cons, and I'm just being honest. I did a pros and cons list, and I wrote down a lot of pros, and I think I had like one con, and the one con was we struggling with not having sex. But I was like, but if we get married, I'm like, that'll go away, and that'll be on the pros list. So that was kind of like, so initially before that date happened, when Rashid was moving me out, when he was moving me out of my dorm, he mentioned as he's moving me out, like, we should get married. And I was like, no, we ain't got no money for that or whatever. And I like dismissed it. And then we went on this date. And then after I did the pros and cons list, I came to him and said, how about what if we got married? And he was kind of dismissing me like, well, no, like kind of thing. So how we ended up getting married, I don't know. But we ended up getting married a year after graduation.
I got a couple people that want to speak, right? So I got two final questions, right? And I
Yep.
got a lot of questions, but I'm going to just sum it up so I can have other people speak, right?
Yeah.
So my first question is, can you tell us the highest of the high of your marriage? What's the highest point that you remember of your marriage? Something that's blissful or something that stands out or stood out in your marriage? And y'all been married over 16 years, right? So,
Yeah.
and y'all over 20. So can
Yeah.
you tell me?
I think for us, every 5 years has been a high, and a low. I don't know why, but every 5 years. And we don't have kids. So being married without children for this long is very different than when you have kids. I don't know how different it is because I don't know the side with the kid part, but we really just choosing each other every day. There's no other, thing that's keeping us. So I feel like the highest high, I'm probably going to say right now we're probably on the highest high, and it's probably because we're both moving in this era where we're both I'm gonna be 40 next year, you're gonna be 40 next month, and I think we're starting to see each other in a different way, but in a good way. But there was some growing pains that had to happen like last year, to make us see each other differently, and respect each other, and like create new boundaries and different things so that our love can continue. But I do think every 5 years there was a high and there was a low. Like I remember the first 5 years, um, we were arguing about how we was gonna clean up the house. We had our first house, and I was like, okay, you're gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And then he didn't want to do it that way. And then I was like, ugh. And then I was like so upset about it. And then like my girlfriend's sister was starting a cleaning business, and so we decided to pay her. And then I would joke with her like, "You saved our marriage," because it was like we started having like these gender, I don't know, like these role like power struggles with each other. That was the first 5 years, and then at the same in that fifth year we had that struggle. But then in that same year we decided that we weren't going to do kids because I said 1 in 5 years when we first got married, and then I wasn't ready to be a mom in my 20s, so I was like, oh, I can't do this. And so he wasn't either, and so we ended up deciding he was going to get a new car because he was like, we're going to either have a baby or I'm going to get a new car. I'm like, you're going to get a new car? And I'm like, I'm like, you can take the car back. You can't take the baby back. So like, that's what happened. So I feel like that fifth year, that was the high and low. And then we go on an anniversary trip every year. And so that year we went to Europe, for the first time. And so then the year 10 was high. We had a 100-person 10-year wedding anniversary dinner. It was so cool. We had bought our second home that he really didn't want, but he bought for me anyway. And then I bought a business and he wasn't in agreement with that. So then that took us to a low. So it was like, okay. And then now last year was year 15, and it started off real high. Like I had a really big contract the year before, so we had more money in the bank than we ever had, and it was just like, man, this is so great. And then he decided like, I need to see who I am outside of you. I need a break. I'm codependent on you. I don't have no identity outside of you. And so that was a shock. And I'm like, where is that coming from? And then we still went on a fabulous trip for our anniversary, but it was like a mixed feelings trip. We ended up going to Africa last year for the 15th, but it was like we knew he wanted to do this break afterwards. So it's like the trip was like bittersweet, but it was still a blessing for us to do it together, and we did have a good time. So that's kind of why I say what I said.
Oh, she said a lot. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna let them on here because at the end of the day, you said a lot. And so to sum it up, I do know that you all are really, really happy now. I know you had ups and downs, and so that's what a lot of marriages go through. I know that you made a lot of money. He made a lot of money, and so I know he wasn't really in agreement with the money that you made. He was like, "Oh, I need to make my own separate from that," and so that was a jungle too. And so they really make money. They really, really young and they're thriving. So we're gonna let Lim and Roman here first, and then we'll be able to let people in individually that have questions. So come on in, Lim. I'll let you come on first. Let me see. Lim, you got a request to be on because I don't see him anymore. Let's see. Like, yeah, I don't see how to let him on. He got a request to be on. But other than that, so Osha, I really appreciate you taking time. I have a lot of questions, but I know we want people to ask questions in the chat, or we want them to come on and join in. Lim talking about he got some points of reflections. And Bishop don't never agree with nothing. He gonna say that's a wife right there speaking. So at the end of the day, this is uncommon. It's uncommon from what we experience on a regular basis. I do not see Rome or Lim on here. I'm trying to see where they are. Let me see. Now they said all this stuff before I got on live. They was gonna be on, they was gonna be ready, and all. So I mean, I might have to bring Bishop on. Come on, Bishop. So somebody, okay, so somebody, come on. Let me see. Here go Rome. So we'll bring Rome on first. This is Rome. He got a lot of good intake, and I just feel like I don't want to be the only one asking you questions, right? So we're gonna let Rome
Okay.
ask you questions, and then we'll be able to take it from there. Come on, Rome.
Yo, what up, though? First and foremost, congrats to you and your husband. That's a unlikely story in the millennial years. Number one, I'm just being straightforward because it's very few women who can be celibate, let alone virgins, going into a marriage. So the fact that you had that type of mindset, kudos to you. But you was also, at a point where you let him do his thing. You said you had an open relationship. I caught that. I think that was key because, not everybody is wise enough and mature enough to handle that type of friendship, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what I want you to touch on is the question that we had on the flyer. Is there hope for the young people out here right now because you got married pretty young? With the social medias, we have way more distractions in the 2000s than we ever did
Sure.
in the 80s and 90s. There was more social interaction than anything. So I just want to get your viewpoint on that.
Well, I don't do a lot of social media. If it's not for my business, I'm not interested. So I don't know because I don't. Social media doesn't distract me. Now I can't speak for my husband. I think he started to get into it a little bit more. Like we both been Android users. Like he just got an iPhone last year, and I feel like his friends are. He's in a phase now where his friends mean a lot now to him than they did because me and him we did everything together, and now with him turning 40 last year he started feeling away, and so he wants to do more with his friends. Do I think that's kind of influenced by social media? Maybe he's seeing a lot of guys doing men's trips, and the friends he had when we got married are not necessarily those friends. They weren't at a place to do some of those things, right? We are all around the same age when we got married. Now he's hanging out with men who are years older than him, in their 40s already. And he's and his dad didn't really raise him. He was in his life, but not he didn't really raise him. And they basically kind of reconcile like in college, and a lot of that had to do with me being like, hey, you need a computer. You said your dad is in IT. You need to get a computer. Like you working full time in college and you can't, and your library is closed. Like how you going to do your work? So like they kind of reconciled then. So he got his computer and finished school well. But I think these men are kind of operating like a fatherly figure, kind of helping him. So I don't know, because I'm sure those men may be, they might. I don't really care, to be honest, about how social media, because I'm a woman of faith. And so I pray that God's influence is the dominant influence in him and over his friends. So every time he bring up a friend name, they get added to the list. Lord, influence them, because I can't be there around everything. So I can only talk about how I approach life from a godly perspective, from a biblical perspective. And that's how I feel like God has been keeping us, to be honest.
I love it. I appreciate it. What you got, Lim?
So, I want to touch on something you said in the beginning with two things. You had your parents in your life, I thought was fantastic. And even though the marriage wasn't perfect, even having that stability of them together and staying together, it allows you to see marriage, I believe, in a different light. Lowe's had the same type of testimony when it comes to that. I come up from a single parent home. I never seen that, right?
My
Growing
husband
up.
did too.
It, it makes a difference. It makes
It
a
does.
difference. All right. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is you said about saving yourself for marriage, and you were dating at 16, 15, 17. Now, let me just say this, and I think you can agree to this. If you're not giving your body to someone, that is not the same relationship as just going out on dates with people,
Yes, I agree.
right? Because there's different emotional attachment.
Yep.
Now, here's where I want to go with this. Because you did do that, you had an advantage that my grandparents had because they got married at 15 and 16 and they only knew each other. So you didn't
Yep.
have all this background soul ties and, right, and soul ties and, right, and trauma and
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction from other men that you
Mm-hmm.
brought into the marriage, right?
Absolutely.
And that makes a hell of a difference because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times what some of our behavior is controlled by all the people we've been with.
Yeah, I agree.
So you gave your husband what I term a blank flash drive, and
Hmm.
he was then able to download his thing and your thing onto this flash drive. It wasn't nobody else on it.
That's true.
Most
Well, we
people
had some
bring
people.
most people bring all kind of junk on their flash drive. It's got spam on it. It's, well, come on now, let's talk. Let's talk.
That's
It's
true.
got all kind of convoluted stuff on it. So by the time they present themselves into the marriage relationship, they're not dealing with you first, baby. They're dealing with all of them. I got to get through
I
John,
agree.
Timothy, Rashad, Rashida. I got to deal with all of them to try to understand you, but they still here. And most
Yeah,
of us in the black community don't do, for whatever reason, we don't do therapy. We don't reconcile some of the past trauma that we've been exposed to. And then we come into these relationships hoping that everything just going to work out.
I agree.
So, yeah, I commend you for that. I say all that to say this. I commend you for giving your husband and honoring him and God first, but then
Yep.
honoring him to present yourself a living sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
So then at least if we have problems, guess what's happening? It ain't from Tommy in 5 years ago. It ain't from Susie. It ain't
Mm-hmm.
from it's
So
us. It's me and
so
you.
let me
We got a
Yeah.
problem.
so let me
So I just
Yeah.
want to say that. Thank you for
Um,
letting me speak.
well, praise God. Thank you.
no, let me switch gears. So you know me, I'm gonna shake the boat, right? So if you had all of this personal relationship with God coming in with celibacy into your marriage, which I think is absolutely, like Lim said, holy and acceptable. However, tell us about your husband's religious background. I don't think it was the same, right? So tell us about him and what he felt and what he go through. Because my sister on the phone, I want her to get on the phone too. But the thing is, your faith might be different than his. Does
Absolutely.
that right? Does that still mean a marriage can't work? Like, so tell us a little bit more about your husband and his struggle with faith.
So when we met each other and we were courting each other, it was the same. You know, we would read the Bible together, we would pray together, we would talk about all kind of things, you know. And then when he turned 30, so that was about 10 years ago, when he turned 30, he decided that he had all these God questions. The very first question he had is, why didn't he see the power in the church? And so that was the very first question he had. And his mom has been overcoming MS for many years. And, you know, he's seen people pray for her and stuff like that. And he didn't see her get whole. And so those things, I don't know where all of that was when we first got together, but 10 years in, like, well, not totally 10 years in, but about 7 years, that we probably married about 7 years, but he was turning 30. And so I told him, I was like, you know what, those are God questions. And I was like, I don't know if I can't answer them. You know, maybe you can talk to the pastor because he had led us to the ministry we were attending. So he led us there. So I was like, ask, you know, the pastor. And the pastor actually told him that a lot of those questions he couldn't answer, that they were God questions. You know, you ask God. And so that kind of started a little strife in our marriage. I'm not going to lie, because I was definitely kind of devastated in the sense where my mom always kind of had I won't say lower, but she had a different type of approach to faith than my father because he grew up in the ministry in church. She did not. But Rashid grew up in the ministry. So it was kind of like I made sure, like, that was one of my fears that I had said to myself when I got married, I'm never going to marry somebody who is not evenly yoked with me, you know, so I don't deal with what I kind of saw when my mom's calling my daddy a Jesus freak and, you know, not being okay with him, you know, doing some things for the church, like tithing and just different things. Like I saw that, you know, growing up, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go through that. So I'm like, I'm have somebody who believes just like me, in which Rashid did, you know, when we got married. And so when he had sort of that faith crisis, is what I call it. When he had that, I didn't respond well to that. And I ain't gonna lie. I was very ugly. And I definitely said some harsh things to him, in a manner of like, you tricked me. Like, I would have never married you if I didn't think. I was like, because I had never dealt with someone at that was the first time I ever dealt with something like that, where I thought faith was such a serious thing that nobody moved away from their faith. I never knew anybody like that had a faith and then they kind of started questioning their faith. So because I had never dealt with it before, I still don't excuse myself. I did not agape love him in that and try to meet him where he was and looking at him as a person, like an individual. And he grew up with a lot of trauma in his childhood. From his mom, from his dad, and just his family in general. And I think that a lot of that just probably started crashing in on him at 30 and probably again at 40, But this time around, so I didn't respond well to that, but we did continue to stay together. I thought I was going to have to divorce him because I just didn't understand. I'm like, God, are you saying that this is over? Like, I'm not understanding, like, why is this happening? Kind of thing. And then God told me, and I went in my prayer room many nights that God would put me to sleep and I would just be crying and he just put me to sleep. Every time I came home from work, that's basically what I did. I just had to go in my secret space with God. And I remember when he finally got me out, and I don't know how long I did this, but I know that the Holy Spirit would just take me to sleep. God said, I'll never put more on you than you can bear. And I think that was just really hard for me. And he knew it was a lot for me to bear. So he just would put me to sleep and I would wake up and it'd be like 1:30 in the morning and I would crawl in bed. So it was never an intention for me to like sleep in my prayer room away from him. But he did. Later on, I found out he did take it like that. He felt like I had took a break from the marriage as I was trying to get myself together emotionally to love him through this, because that was such a big part of my identity. And I was very religious when we first got married. And I understand the difference between religion and having a faith now, but I didn't then. And so I mistreated him. So that is what it is. And it was very sinful and I had to repent from it.
Let's
But I didn't.
up there.
Mhm.
I mistreated him. Ladies, do we hear this accountability? I just want to make sure you hear this accountability. I mistreated him. Now, how did you get from mistreating him to where we are now? Tell us about the rigorous process that you had to go through. Yeah, I like that woo. Tell us about the rigorous process that you had to go through from then to now. You
Oh man.
mistreated. Go ahead.
It was a lot. It was a lot because we ended up deciding to sell our first house around that time. So we moved to a new area. We weren't around like family or friends or that ministry anymore that we were a part of. That made it a little easier because it wasn't like I was going out the door every Sunday without him now. So it was like we just was in the house together. And they had some virtual, so I would watch it online. So they were doing that back then. So but we had lots of conversations where I was trying to condemn him and judge him and like, what are you saying? Like, you just doesn't make sense. Like life, like just a lot of that. So it took some time for me to just start focusing on my relationship again with God and not our co-relationship that we had together. So that's when I just started focusing on building my faith, making sure I really believed in what I believed in, skip whatever he's believing in, but what do I believe? Do I still believe what I believe? And so it took me some years to, get that confidence back in my faith. And then when I did that, but the damage had been done. The damage had been done. And I didn't know it had been done so deeply to my husband until probably last year. So that's 10 years after the fact, where he is something that he would bring up to be like, he said to me last year, like, I think I'm depriving you of a certain kind of man, that goes to, I feel like you had this idea of a man like going to service with, his wife and doing all these things. And he just felt like that would never be him again. And would I accept him, the way that he is? And so God had to really deal with me about agape loving my husband. And that's which is God love, no reason love. And that's the love, God loves us with. And that love
Could you tell us?
transcends religious activities. And so I had to explain that to him. So that's kind of where we are.
Can you tell us how he shut down? Because see, what I'm trying to get the people online to understand is marriage ain't all peaches and cream all the time, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's good, drink a ling a ling. Because me personally, I thought when I got married, it was gonna be a bell go off and everything was gonna be perfect in the sunset. That's what I really
Okay.
right. That's what I thought. So I was naive. So can you tell the
I
people
probably thought
how?
that way
Right,
too.
I know, but what I'm saying is, could you tell the people how he shut down completely, and
Yeah.
what did you do when he shut down?
So, April of last year, well, he didn't let me know until probably his birthday. So he turned 39 last year in June. And I just felt like he was off. And I kept being like, you're off. I can't put my finger on it, but you're off. And me and him, we're used to. So the other thing I didn't say in the beginning is when I went to college, I had basically my two best friends at the time. They went to a different college, and so basically I had to start over. So Rashid essentially replaced my two female best friends, and so I'm just now like understanding how that impacted our relationship so deeply over the years, because that's why I did everything with him. I talked to him. I didn't even want to do anything with my girlfriends. I only wanted to do it with him first, and then I'll do it with y'all. But because he was my best friend, he was my first friend, but he replaced literally two females in my life. And so my husband's masculine, but he still catered to me in that way with talking to me as long as I wanted to talk and all these things, doing everything I asked him to do and all these things. So last year that started breaking down because he started giving to me from an empty place. I can honestly say that my husband has given me everything that I have asked for over the last 16 years, but I can't say that I've honestly given everything to him. And I think he's had very little that he probably has wanted over the years, but I was so self-absorbed and I was so selfish. I was so driven on, I got to get my business together. Like, I can't work a 9 to 5. I need to be retired from a 9 to 5 by 35. And I really was obsessed with that. And so when it came to my husband, like, he kind of just let me be in that space and let me run with that. And he didn't really have a lot of requirements for me, so he just let me be. And last year, I know a lot of this has to do with the men that he started playing basketball with and the men he started being around. He started seeing them move differently. Like, wait, they women are catering to them and this and that. My wife ain't doing that. She don't even barely want to cook. I was the kind of wife that, like, I remember cooking for him and his little brother one time. His brother was living with us, and I was like, did y'all like the meal? And they was like, yeah. And I was like, good, because I don't care if you didn't. Like, I don't care. Like, I was like that. And it's not a good way to be because it just made it seem like I only cared about me. I didn't care about his needs at all. I didn't, like, my husband has studied me so well. He knows me so well. But last year was the first time when he asked for some time to himself that I ever started to really pay attention and study him and actually study men in general. I never had to do it. I just had to be me, and he had to just be him. And then it wasn't enough. We had to learn a little bit more because we've been with each other for so long in our adult life. We didn't learn like all those people that you said, that could have also had those soul ties, but you also do have some learnings from that.
Yes.
You have some learnings around how men move, how women move. So God dealt with me a lot over the time that he took for himself. He wanted 3 months. He wanted 3 months to himself to self-reflect, to a time of appreciation and a time to set goals. So that's what he wanted it for. Now, the 3 months actually turned into 5 months. But it was good. It was good time for him to himself. And I like the way that he came back, into the relationship and the way that he wanted to move as far as being decisive, being the leader of our household and being the provider. Those were the things that he kind of got out of it. And I got so much out of it from the Holy Spirit, dealing with me about the ugliness that I had been in our marriage and the selfishness that I had. And I had to repent from that. And I had to let God literally kind of rebuild me in a sense from inside out so that I could be this. I had then these new goals I wanted to do. I wanted to be more feminine. I wanted to be more catering. I wanted to be more under his authority. So it's like we were kind of going through the same shift at the same time, but we didn't know it until we knew it. And so that's kind of like the new stage that we're in.
So I'm gonna let them ask questions or anybody else want to come live. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah. So I wanted to say kudos to you for the self-reflection, honest self-reflection. So this thing you said, you actually admitted to something that's hard for some women to understand. do I even know what a man wants? And does it even matter? Does it even matter?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know what I want. I know it's
Mm-hmm.
important. And he should want what I want. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that part right there. Bless his heart. He should want what I want. So if he want what I want, I'm fine. But that's not how a marriage works.
And
It
not
can
even
come.
just that.
Right.
Not even to cut you off. Not even just that's not how a marriage works. But a person who does everything you want them to do is a servant. That's what God ended up showing me. And I'm like, I don't want that as a
Right.
husband. I don't
Right.
want him like we're gonna serve each other's needs, yes, but that's not what I want. And I didn't realize that's kind of how I was moving. Not kind of, that was how I was moving. And he couldn't my husband, he he's not a man of many words, but when he speaks, it's profound. And so it's one of those things where, like, when he said little things, during his process, when we come, because he went off to Airbnb, he had this time to himself, I had my time at the house. And so when we did connect, he didn't want to cut off communication. So when we did go on dates, or when we did see each other throughout the period of time, he wasn't really saying much, but it was me going to the Holy Spirit, and me going into prayer, me going into fasting, and me standing on the word of God, that I never thought anything like this would ever happen in our marriage. Because me and Rashid, we both would agree that we had a good marriage, like a good 15 years. Like, a lot of people can't say that. We had a lot more highs than we've ever had lows, a lot more laughs, and etc. And so this just seemed like crazy for him to need this time. It didn't make sense to me. But when he asked me, he said, let me have this. And he was like, I know. He's like, as much as you don't understand it, he was like, let me have this. I love you. And I was like, okay. And every time that I wanted to say, because he ended up realizing he was kind of like a people pleaser. So he didn't like seeing me hurt. But at the same time, he had to do this for himself. And I knew he did. And every time that I wanted to be like, okay, just call it off, kind of thing, the Holy Spirit wouldn't let me. Every time I just couldn't let those words come out my mouth for him to not do it. And even though I thought he was doing it kind of like a man way, and he didn't let me plan his sabbatical the way that he said he was going to do it, and all that stuff. But I had to let go of that, because also God was dealing with me on control. God never meant for us to control other human beings. That's witchcraft. Literally, that's what it says in the word. So it's just meant for us women can influence their men, but we're not
Right.
supposed to control their behavior. And so when I started, that was a lot of what I learned last year too, is like, I'm not trying to control him, but I put a lot of rules in place, like, oh, if we go to family, you have to always go with me to family events and friends, my primary friends and work events. And so when those things came up, there was no discussion. This is what we agreed to in the beginning, kind of thing. And I never even noticed that Rashid was starting to get annoyed by that. It didn't matter. This is what we agreed to. This is what I saw my daddy do. He went to all my mom's events, and my mom went to all her, events. And so I didn't look at him as an individual, like I just looked at us as a unit, and we're going to do everything together, like more of an accessory than an actual person,
Oh,
that has feelings and
oh,
things of that
man.
nature.
Oh, Lord.
So I'm so
Yeah.
grateful.
Oh, my God. No, you said so much. Now, let me say this. When we do that, and this happens between both, I believe both parties, when we stop considering what somebody else needs and stop asking them and assuming, surely you like this
Yep.
because you've been doing it for so long. That doesn't mean
Yes.
somebody likes something just because they've been doing it. Right? Traditions doesn't mean somebody's in compliance.
Yes.
So we have to do check-ins. Are you okay with sets XYZ? How does
Yep.
this make you feel? So if we're not going to go see a therapist, then we got to do that type of thing ourselves. And so
Absolutely.
I love what you just said, because yes, we always have to check, and we don't, and this is the big one, we don't control people. I don't care if we've been married 100 years, that is not your slave,
Not
right?
my job.
That's
Mm-mm.
not, yeah, right. And so at the end of the day, it's always good to take into consideration how someone feels. The other thing I want to say, and I'll be quiet, is regarding him having male relationships outside of the marriage, meaning part friendships. Right. That is extremely important for
It is.
someone who didn't have their father, as you said,
Yes.
right? That
Yes.
male camaraderie, that bonding time. he needs it more than most. But we all need it. But you need, and I'm speaking from a man who had his dad leave, come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know how big that is. So in order for him to find out his own identity outside of the marriage, he's
Mm-hmm.
got to bond with other men and get
Yep.
some of that. And same thing, vice versa with you. Maybe you have girlfriends that you need to connect with, or just mothers of the church, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Do,
did.
Some,
I did.
right?
During his period of time, like I did, and I am connecting with my girlfriends a lot more now that we're back under the same roof and all of that.
Right.
And I do see the difference, even though would I still love to do everything with Rashid? Absolutely, because he's so cool. That's why all these men want to be around him. He's been cool like that from day one. That's why we've been cool with each other. But what Miles Monroe did for me, I don't know how familiar you guys are with. That's where my journey of learning about male and female differences came from, and it really opened my eyes. Where it wasn't like, oh, this just how I am, or this just how Rashid is. No, this is how all men and women are. These are all very common things. And the 5 unique needs that he talked about with women and men having, that they're not nice to have, like, no, you need it, like you need gas for your car, or your car's not going to run right, it'll malfunction. You will malfunction as a woman, you will malfunction as a man. And I literally, once I learned that, like around December, so we were probably about 3 months into his, I call it his self-care process. We were about 3 months into it, and it made me reflect, like, dang, we were both malfunctioning and we didn't even know. Now that I understand what the needs are. And one of the big things you talked about with the males is what I consider he calls it recreational companionship. But that is what I see now he's getting from the males, that he goes out with, that he plays ball with. And because I got used to spending time by myself during our process, it's okay. It doesn't bother me. If we didn't have that process to help me kind of like kind of configure my life and because I was so focused on building a business, and then once the business started growing, I kind of lost myself. I used to do a whole bunch of other things outside of Rashid, and I wasn't doing those things anymore. So then I started putting those things back on my plate. I love doing community service, started brushing up on my Spanish, and just all these things. Started really exercising like 3 times a week. I started putting my own schedule
Yeah.
together, and those things. So now I have a life outside of Rashid, because before I was depending on Rashid to be all of my socialization. I didn't care about talking to none of my girlfriends. I just want us to talk. I just want him to hear me and listen to me and get me back, But this is how he had been for 20 years. So this is what I was used to, until he's kind of like, oh my God, like I can't keep giving to this girl from an empty place. And I don't want to hurt her feelings. I don't want, her to think I don't love her. It's not that. It's just, I need to find me, and it's okay for me to want to hang out with other people and not feel bad that now I got to answer all these texts. And I've never been really the kind of wife, honestly, never, since we've been married, that really cared about Rashid going out. I do remember when he turned 30, I remember saying, you too old to be spending the night out. Like, and so like, let's just nip that, you're 30, like kind of thing. And I feel like a part of what he was doing last year was kind of rebellion, probably that in his head. Like, she talking about I was too old, now I'm about to be out of my 30s and I didn't really get to do it a lot, or I don't know. But it don't bother me either way. You know what I'm saying? Like, the thing that we both, told each other, and I know for women it might be hard, because if you've dealt with infidelity, which we've never dealt with that in our marriage. So I can't speak for the women that may have dealt with that. But for me, when I told him I've never desired anybody but him, he told me he never desired anybody but me, then it was never that part of it was gone. So what you're doing outside the house don't have nothing to do with no woman. Have at it, like, have fun, see you tomorrow, kind of thing. Like, and I'm still going to live my life, and I'm not going to feel no kind of way. Do I prefer you be snuggled up with me? Yeah. But if you want to go and hang out with your friends, that's okay too, because you'll give me that time too. And plus, I've had that time for 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you are really like, oh my God, like he hasn't deprived me from like quality time for real. You know what I'm saying? Now I cherish it even more, because I know he got other people that want to spend recreational companionship with him. And it's not just me, his romantic companion.
well, let me say this, Osh. Thank you so much. I mean, you tackled a whole lot, right? You tackled a whole lot, but I want a female perspective as far as asking you questions, because I'm comments, and then some of the people are obviously they want to hear Rashid's point of view, right? They want to hear his part of what he got to say and what he feel about everything you said. That's what people saying. And a lot of people just are applauding you because they really agree with a lot of stuff you're saying. So we heard from Lim. Do we have a female that want to come on and ask questions from a female perspective? I want to make sure that it's even, if you would, even Steven. So do we have a female that want to join, request to go live? I'll let you in here and you can ask all the smoke or the questions you want, or you can just put them in the chat. I know I was trying to get my sister on here. I don't know if she want to come on, but she was asking some questions in the chat. But all I'm saying to you is if you want to ask questions from a female perspective, this is your opportunity, because believe it or not, Osh, it's a lot of people on here that inspire to be married. It's people on here that their marriage is failing and it's stagnant right now, and it's on the way out. So
Well,
why we got?
can I reiterate the 5 unique needs, because I didn't say what they were for women and men?
Can you type them in? Because I want to be able to say them. Can you type them in the chat?
Yeah,
We
let me check.
we need to put them in here so they can take a screenshot. So I definitely want you to go over the 5 needs because you told me, but I think this would be very good to be able to put it in the chat so somebody can screenshot it based on that. So we have.
And the reason why these are important, you have to figure out with your spouse or whoever that what order of priority they are for them, because for some people some things are more important than others, and I think that's really helped me a lot.
And Los, read the chat. Mama Liz read what she's saying in the chat. Mama Liz.
I ain't studying Mama Liz. Mama Liz talking about some bring your boy home, but see, Ocean got over 20 years. Hey, I ain't studying Mama Liz. I saw that comment, but I'm ignoring it because Mama Liz don't want to come on and get this smoke. Now, if she want to ask the question herself, I'll let her in here. But she talking about Curtis got to come on home if his job don't require it. But if that man wants to record time outside of a woman, Ocean said let him go. And Ocean said it. I'm just letting Ocean say what she said. So I'm just. Anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns? Because Liz talking about if it ain't got nothing to do with your job. Come on, hey.
Bring your butt home.
Let me put her. I'm gonna put her on in here. Let me see, Mama Liz. Let me see how you put it on. Let me see.
Remove. She got to send you the request. She got to send you the request.
I know. I think one of y'all got to leave. We got.
Hit her now.
Oh, okay. Ocean left on the accident. Okay, let me get her.
No, I think hers is having some trouble.
All right, let me get her now. Let me see. No, it say add as a moderator. It say remove from the live, block, unfollow. I don't see it. So Liz, you gotta press the little camera with the plus at the bottom.
She said, "I'm
and that's
ready."
Right. Tell her come on. Because at this point, Ocean did a phenomenal job at that.
She did.
No,
she did a great.
Kudos to her.
No, but I told y'all specifically. There she go. Hold on. Here she come right here. Mama Liz, come on through, Mama Liz. Let's see what Mama Liz say with Mr. Really John Earl. Let's see what Mr. Earl is really. Okay, so Mama Liz, how you doing?
Hey, y'all.
Okay, so tell me your thoughts about what Ocean said and your perception.
Woo! Because I'm like, she did hit on a lot of great things. I personally, my story would be totally different. You know, what I love the guy right. I forgot your name. Y'all don't forgive me for not remembering y'all names. But when you was talking about the disc drive or whatever, you came in blank. Look, I can't relate to that. Okay. I'm on my second marriage, and I had at one time in my life been a worldly woman. Let's say that. I came into, this is my second marriage. The first one was abusive. Of course, you can't stand that too long. I thank God that I was raised, a way that I was strong enough to leave. So that's neither here nor there. This relationship right here, was based on being equally yoked. We kind of came from the same, cut from the same cloth. We both came into the relationship with a lot of baggage. And then you say, can a marriage last in 2024? I absolutely believe that it can, but you have to have, a foundation built, with God first. You have to We still learning, like, to, know our own self, learn our own self. But I studied my husband. He studied me. We up front, I remember her saying how they stayed in the car so long. That was the same story. We talked to the sun. He had to be at work at 6 in the morning. So that's when he left, about 5:15. We just talked about everything, our likes and our dislikes. I think that's very important. But I'm a very seasoned woman, so I ain't playing no games. I ain't sugarcoating nothing. I'm coming with all my flaws off the top to make sure that you understand what